What is the craziest encounter of rich kid syndrome that you have experienced? A guy I met in my early 20s was the richest person I've ever known. His dad was CFO for a big bank, but died when my friend was 14. He grew up in a massive mansion, had his rent paid for in a luxury rental building, and had unlimited funds for drugs. Eventually, his mom forced him to go to rehab, which he did for a couple of months. One day, while he was at rehab, my roommate got a call from him. He said he's outside and didn't know where else to go. He had been cut off from his money, knew that we had an extra room, and asked if he could stay with us while he learned basic life skills, getting a job, buying groceries, cleaning, budgeting, etc. We let him, against our better judgment. About a month in, he had managed to stay sober, keep a job, and not be such a parasitic piece of shit. His mom thought he was doing better too, so she reconnected him to his money. His whole attitude and demeanor completely changed. All of a sudden it's I don't have to stay in this apartment, living like I'm poor. I don't even have to stop doing drugs. I've got my money back. He left right before rent was due, and basically told us to ourselves. 2 months later, he had the exact same situation happen. His mom cut him off again, forced him to go to rehab. He left again and called us, but this time we figured he'd rather not live in our apartment living like he's poor. My college roommate's mom gave him freaking $1,400 for the weekend just randomly. He blew through the whole thing by Saturday, asked his mom for more money, and was screaming at her because she promised $1,400 for the weekend, and he spent most of what she gave him on Friday, which isn't a part of the weekend. Knew a trust fund girl whose dad gave her the money to start a company. She lost it when she went on vacation for 6 months and forgot she was supposed to pay her employees all the time. She assumed they would not get paid for 6 months and be there when she got back. I quizzed her on this for a few minimum, and it was clear she had no idea what a job was. Look up Corona Del Mar High School cheating scandal. Happened at my school. Parents paid around $50,000 apiece to have a tutor bug the school computers and change students' grades. They all lawyered up big time when it came out, and all the kids got off free and all made it into their top 3 schools. Edit. I would also like to add that this made the news and all the parents whined that their children were innocent and just had a bad tutor. Had a girl I went to school with total 4 brand new cars, think Range Rover, Escalade, etc. I was also in a class with this girl when the teacher handed out papers that needed to be signed by a parent, and she signed it herself and tried to turn it in the same period as it was handed out, and freaked out when the teacher wouldn't accept it. Kids who would talk pick fights and then turn around and say if you touch me my dad will sue. There are a lot more. Girl I went to high school with got a Mercedes for her 16th birthday. Bitched and moaned about the fact that she didn't get a Lexus because her name was Lexi and she thought it would be so cool for Lexi to drive a Lexus with a custom license plate saying Lexi. Her parents did cave and buy her a Lexus for her 17th birthday. My college roommate threw a massive tantrum, like on the floor screaming and crying, because her parents got her a used bagasse truck for graduation. It was a 2013 truck with less than 10k miles that was fully upgraded / loaded with every possible add-on. We graduated in 2014. The car was maybe a year old. She already had a 2009 Range Rover. This happened a couple of weeks ago at the Infiniti dealership. I was in the waiting room with a very well-dressed lady for our loaner cars. She left the waiting room to look at her loaner and came back crying. She said she drives a fully loaded QX80 and they gave her a QX60 with nothing in it. I said sorry that happened and asked how long she was going to have the loaner for. She said a couple of hours. I wanted to tell her to suck it up, but instead I sat there quiet thinking how life must be easy for her to cry over a loaner car. A Saudi guy in the UK got in a crash with light damage to one side of brand new Mercedes. He called for one of his assistants to come get him, even though the car was fully drivable. My friend rolled up on call with his tow truck and asked the guy where he wanted the Merc towed. The guy gave him the keys and said keep it, I don't want it. Damn, I need to befriend some Saudi princes. Hello. I'm a prince from Saudi Arabia. I have money that I must give away. Please email me. Please give me back my $50 you asked of in the ML response. Please sir, be patient. The bank is wiring you your funds. For $50 additional USD I can expedite this. A girl in my school was surprised by her parents in the school's parking lot with a new BMW. A freaking BMW. Everyone who is out is basically watching this go down, and she starts crying. At first we are all thinking it's because she's so happy, but then she runs back into the school. Apparently they were supposed to show up earlier, I'm assuming when there would be more students to witness the surprise. I felt bad for the dad, because he looked totally embarrassed and sad about it. You know, in his head he's like, I created this monster. I had a scholarship to private school for my secondary education, 11 to 18. We were by no means poor, but compared to the people who were paying full school fees I was a peasant. The vast majority of the students were wealthy, and about half of them were spoiled little brats. Most of the kids got given cars for their 17th birthday in anticipation of passing their driving tests. One boy in particular in my year had a September birthday, so was one of the first to take his test, and he had a huge house/garden. So he already knew how to drive. You can drive on private land at any age here. On the day he passed his test, he got dropped off back at his school in his shiny new sports car. I don't know what type it was, I jaff about cars, but everyone else seemed impressed. He picked up a couple of friends to go for a spin, and before he got 100 meters up the road, he completely wrecked the f***ing car. His dad bought him a new one the next day and he complained that it was the wrong color. Not exactly rich kid syndrome, but there was this family that had 2 children who attended the elementary school that was connected to my middle school. Every day the 2 parents would leave the house and drive separately to pick up their 2 kids before returning home. I should mention at this point that they each drove a Lamborghini, one black and one orange, back to back in the pickup line to get their kids from elementary school. At first I thought they were just being showy, but then I realized that they were two-seaters, so this was really the only way to do it. As a kid, I was piss poor, like we had no money and barely kept the lights on. My mother did an awesome job and even worked 2 different jobs and went to night school at one point to make a better future for us. I grew up without a lot of things, but it taught me a lot about what you really need in life, which is a roof over your head and food in your belly. Everything after that is a plus really. I had a lot of friends who were way better off than me, but one kid in particular had everything. He was a Jehovah's Witness, so didn't do birthdays/Christmas, but would often just get stuff to kind of make up for it. At times he would bitch his mother out for buying him something that he thought was crap or wasn't the right model of something, despite getting loads of stuff which was awesome all the time. He was that kid that had all the games/consoles/toys in the world, but would moan about it. One of the last times I hung out with him, he was shouting at his mother because she had promised him that she would buy him a new guitar. He was learning, but the time of the day had gotten late and she wasn't able to go. Like it was when all the stores were shut, so it was literally impossible. But this kid just kept chewing her out because of it and speaking to her like she was some kind of moron. It was painful to watch, and I was like 14 at the time. I stopped hanging around with him after that. I later heard his mother cracked and had enough of him, then kicked him out of the house. He later ended up being a shoplifter and lived in the local YMCA for a bit. I live in a town that sits on the shore of a really big, not great, but still big, lake. My friends and I decided a few years ago to buy a boat we could take out onto the open water. None of us are poor, but none of us have a shitload of extra money on the side, so we did it as cheap as we could. We bought a decent boat that was over 30 years old and spent 2 years rebuilding the engine, refinishing some of the interior, and generally getting the thing shipshape. We were super proud of the fact that we managed to get a fully functional and reliable boat together for a little under $5,000. Here is where the story starts. We were out on the boat on a beautiful Saturday drinking beers and cruising the beaches for girls that might want to ride on our new boat. This is why any straight man owns a boat. We pulled up to a beach and anchored, and eventually a few girls waded out to us to see if they could have a couple beers. One thing led to another, and they were climbing aboard to head out for a spin. This is when I noticed one of the girls was not really excited to be on the boat. We got to the middle of the lake and started swimming off the boat, having a good time, except for that one girl. My friend asked her what was wrong. She replied, "I don't even feel safe on this piece of shit. That's my grandmother's island over there. Drop me off now." We were hurt that we had put so much effort into the boat and she dismissed it as a piece of garbage, but whatever, it is kind of a beater. We dropped her off on the island. The dock had over $5 million in boats parked at it. The girl sucked, but grandma was awesome. She brought us all ashore for beers and food, and berated her granddaughter for being such a snob. Little old lady, 80 plus, lives out there alone all summer. We go back to the island all the time to help granny with the yard work and such, in exchange for hanging out on a private island, but I haven't talked to the granddaughter since. I had 2 friends in college who were from UAE. They were brothers, and their parents were sending them to school in the US. They were actually pretty cool and down to earth, if not a good bit weird. They knew I didn't have a ton of money and couldn't afford to do the cool stuff they did, so they covered me all the time. Crazy stuff, like renting a private plane to go to a concert, black cars with drivers, expensive dinners and exclusive clubs. On the weird side, they slaughtered a goat in the bathtub to make a traditional Arabian dinner, and they wore far too much draka. I had a UAE friend like this. He rented out a bar for a frat party / his birthday party and asked why I wasn't drinking the free beer. "Oh, I have celiac so I can't. It's no big deal really." "Oh no, everyone gets provided for." He opened me a tab and ordered me gluten-free food.